Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Brothers and sisters, jazakumullahu khairan for responding to our request for your attendance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and bless every step that you take and make it a way in which you, inshallah ta'ala, we will enter Jannah, especially as we know from the hadith of Prophet ﷺ concerning the majalis of dhikr, those places or those gatherings where the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His mercy upon us and to forgive us of our sins. Today we have with us our Shaykh Kamal El-Mekki. Shaykh Kamal El-Mekki, inshallah, I'll give you a quick bio, inshallah ta'ala, or biography or quick introduction to him, inshallah. Shaykh Kamal El-Mekki is an instructor with Al-Maghrib Institute. He has been dubbed the Black Belt of Dawah, with decades of experience in the Dawah scene. Shaykh Kamal combines his groundbreaking teaching style with his own dash of humor, certain to leave students feel at ease, entertained, but above all skilled and empowered. Shaykh Kamal is known best for his workshop, How to Give Shahadah in 10 minutes. You gave it here, Shaykh, didn't you? In Muntada.
5 years ago or something?
In Muntada.
Yeah,
you came here before. SubhanAllah, I knew it. And I told the brothers. Which he gave here at Muntada, the workshop on how to give Shahadah in 10 minutes. A 6-hour workshop designed to empower ISOCs and Da'wah organizations and brothers like yourselves and mine in the art of Da'wah. His lectures and online videos targeting contemporary challenges have also gained popular fame and positive impact among Muslims and non-Muslims alike. Educated at the hands of numerous prominent scholars from across the world, Shaykh Kamal also has a dynamic experience in the secular world. He is currently delivering the course Shahadah of Fiqh Da'wah in Bradford, which has been a sellout, alhamdulillah, and he will be here in London in April on the 13th to 15th and the 21st and the 22nd of April to deliver the Shahada Fiqh of Da'wah course in London. Inshallah ta'ala, today he will be discussing the challenges of Da'wah at the workplace and at universities, inshallah ta'ala. There's something here about you living in Canada, Shaykh.
I moved 9 months ago.
Alhamdulillah, Shaykh. Okay, Shaykh, so without taking too much of your time, Shaykh, please tafaddal with the lectures.
Do I need to bring this closer?
Yes, please. Let me try and move it for you.
أظن خلاص ولا لا؟
تفضل بدأ إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ما بعد. In the beginning, I would like to sincerely thank all of you for coming and for giving up this portion of your evening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you and multiply your rewards. And yes, I used to live in Canada. I was in Canada for about a year and a half, and 9 months ago I moved to Sudan. For those of you who are not familiar with the country of Sudan, it is the greatest country in the world. I'm serious. And just to clarify, like, I never referred to myself as the black belt of Da'wah or anything like that. That was a description that someone put, I don't know who it was, and I wouldn't describe myself like that. That's not very humble, right? Yani I would describe myself as a 5-degree black belt in Da'wah. It's more accurate, I think. All right, great. So let's talk about challenges in Da'wah. At work, with students, and people who study with you at the university, your neighbors. What are some of the challenges that we face? And I'd like to begin by saying that for the most part, it's hard to put rules for Da'wah. And I know many people love to do that. Many du'at love to put rules. Many organizations love to insist on certain rules for Da'wah. I think that's the better one, yeah. But the truth is, there are no hard and fast rules for Da'wah. So I may tell you a lot of things that might be applicable in the United States, but not necessarily applicable here. So feel free to take and leave from whatever I say today. But let me start by just talking a little bit about our responsibility. The responsibility we have towards, spreading Islam or calling people to Allah Azza wa Jal, or calling the Muslims themselves back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the first thing, let's discuss what is the ruling on Da'wah. And when we say Da'wah here, we mean on enjoining good and forbidding what is evil, on calling the Muslims back to Allah Azza wa Jal, or calling non-Muslims to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the ruling on giving da'wah? So a lot of times you'll find people in communities that believe that giving da'wah is fard kifaya. It's a communal obligation. If some people do it in the community, then it absolves the rest of us from blame. So it's kind of like making the adhan for prayer. If someone makes the adhan, then not every brother has to get up and make the adhan. That one guy doing it, it absolves the rest from the responsibility. So many people think da'wah is the same way. As long as, alhamdulillah, we have da'wah organizations, and we have a masjid and an imam, we have a non-Muslim da'wah team, and we have this group and that group giving da'wah, then we don't have to individually give da'wah. And this is an opinion by some of the scholars, but it is not the opinion with the strongest evidence. The opinion with the strongest evidence says that on a basic level, everyone has to give da'wah. One more time. And to make this easier to understand, underline on a basic level. So on a basic level, everybody in the ummah has to give da'wah. Young, old, educated, uneducated, literate, illiterate, male, female, everybody has to give da'wah. Because enjoining what is good, forbidding what is evil is part of da'wah. So you're telling me everyone has to give da'wah? Yes, everyone has to give da'wah. Even a very, very ignorant man, he has no knowledge of Islam, and he just prays basically and fasts when Ramadan comes, and he doesn't know anything about Islam. He doesn't know how to read or write. He's not educated in secular studies nor Islamic studies. This man has to give da'wah, and he has no skills even. He just makes brooms from trees. He'll make brooms, and then the next day he'll go and sell them in the market. The day after that he'll make more brooms. The day after that he'll sell them in the market. This man's obligated to give some da'wah? Yes, this man's obligated to give some da'wah. Because this man could be walking to the market, he might see two little boys fighting. If he stops them, is that forbidding what's evil? Is that part of da'wah? Yes. He might be walking, he'll find two teenagers using bad words, using profanity. You can tell them, Ya walad, stop saying that word. Is that good? Is that da'wah? Absolutely. He might tell someone to pray, and that person might tell him, what's the evidence that I have to pray? And the man might say, I don't know it. Is that sufficient enough? Yeah. I don't know which ayah says you have to, but I do know everyone has to pray. So he can tell someone pray, he can tell this one don't lie, and that's da'wah. So that means on a basic level, everybody has to give da'wah. And if you're still not convinced with this opinion, try to think of a scenario where someone in this ummah cannot give da'wah. Someone that's able and of sane mind. And don't tell me someone who's in a coma for 12 years. Now realistically, someone that's able and cannot give da'wah. Can you think of a scenario? You probably can't. You can't think of a scenario. That means on a basic level. Now there are some higher levels of da'wah, and that's not for everybody. Does everyone in this room have to teach Qur'anic tafsir? No. So whoever's at that level, they can teach ilm al-hadith or ulum al-hadith, usul al-fiqh, tafsir, things like that. But on a basic level, every single one of us is supposed to give some kind of da'wah. One person asked, he said, if I give a lot of money to an organization that gives da'wah, is that enough for me? Can I say that's my da'wah? And I just answered it like this. Imagine the same person who gives a lot of money to a da'wah organization. So he thinks, okay, I've fulfilled my da'wah obligation. And he walks by and there's, let's say, a 10-year-old smoking a cigarette. So he walks by this 10-year-old who's smoking a cigarette, and he's now supposed to do something about it and tell him, Ya walad, don't smoke, okay? It's haram, don't do it. But he says, wait a minute, I don't have to do this because I give money to the organization and they give da'wah on my behalf. Does that make any sense? No. So that means this is a responsibility that we have, to call Muslims back to Allah, to enjoin what is good, to forbid what is evil, and to call the non-Muslims to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's so many people who are lost, so many people who are unhappy, so many people who are searching for the truth, so many people that are so unhappy that they have suicidal thoughts, that they're consuming alcohol and drugs just to make up for that unhappiness and the sadness in their life. And they just need Islam. And guess who lives next door? You live next door. And this guy, he's trying to discover himself. He travels all the way to India to have an experience, and he comes back and he just ate a lot of spicy kebabs. That's all he got out of it. And you're his neighbor all along. You could have just knocked on his door, given some information about Islam. So what are some of the challenges? And what I'm cautious of, I don't want to tell you, here are the challenges, and then just spill out the antidote or the response to each one. And in your mind, you're sitting here with different challenges in your mind. So I want to speak briefly, and then you'll bring up some of the challenges that you face or that you want to discuss, and then we'll discuss it that way. So, because especially there may be challenges in the UK that I'm not familiar with, as I come from the greatest country on earth. Okay, very good. UK audience is usually a bit more serious than in America. America, you say anything stupid, everybody, it's great. In the UK, you have to use smart jokes and witty sarcasm. We'll try our best. Excellent. Okay, a number of things. Let's just start with, let me start with something, okay? As a non-UK resident, allow me to say this, please, okay? And just test this with anyone who lives outside of the UK and is familiar or roughly familiar with the da'wah in the UK. Ask him, how is da'wah in the UK? Does it seem more aggressive than in other places or not? And allow me to say this, why are you guys so aggressive? What's with the aggression? Why do you guys love debates so much? Wallahi, every other brother I meet, I was at a debate a week ago. Another brother, I was at a debate 2 days ago. Why do you guys have so many debates? And is that a good thing? And then we go to the park and everyone has a box and everyone has a megaphone. This guy has a bigger megaphone. And Islam, and this guy's telling Jesus Christ the Lord, and fighting. Then another debate at the university. Then another debate over there. So is this the default way of giving da'wah? That's the first question. Is debating the default way of giving da'wah? And of course the answer is no. This is a permissible or an allowable way, but there are times and places for that. There are even certain people that do that. And even then the scholars know that this is not good. It's not conducive to people becoming Muslim. It's not conducive to mutual understanding, peaceful coexistence, all those sweet words. But too much of that is happening, too many debates, a lot of fighting. So I would assume what happens is when you go to speak to someone about Islam, they remember that video they watched on YouTube of Muslim and Christian fighting, they remember another debate, and they think, okay, this is a fight, so they get ready for you. Okay, tell me about Islam, feel free. Okay? And this is a problem. And I want to tell you something. How many people here have watched the debate between Jimmy Swaggart and Shaykh Ahmed Didat rahimahullah? Okay, so a good number of you have seen that debate. Now, let's be honest with each other. Who destroyed who in that debate? We all know it. Shaykh Ahmed Didat, he mopped the floor up with the other guy. True or false? True. Now, what would you say, this is a true story, what would you say if I told you there was a church in the United States that mass-produced that debate? Okay, they didn't edit it or anything like that to make their guy win or anything. They mass-produced it and they would give it to people in church. Make hundreds of copies. Here you go. Here's a copy of the debate. Why do you think they did that? Someone who has not heard me give the answer to this, take a guess. Why would they make copies of that debate and hand it out to people in church, Christians? Why? Their guy is being destroyed. Why on earth would they give people copies of that?
To make them enthusiastic to proselytize Christianity.
Okay. To encourage them to give da'wah, perhaps the brother said. That could have been the answer, but actually it's not in this case.
They are biased and they wouldn't look at what Shaykh does, and then they would just listen to it.
Okay.
To show how aggressive the Muslims are.
To show how aggressive the Muslims are, and that's also very probable. Naam?
Maybe like for them to learn off that and then come back with something else.
So they can learn from it and come back with something else, right? But their Shaykh is being embarrassed in it. Why would they make... Naam?
To antagonize.
Sorry?
To antagonize the Christians.
To antagonize the Christians. So maybe that's, they want to get them riled up against the Muslims. Last one. Sorry? To make us look bad.
They think they won.
They think they won. And that's kind of what you're saying. That's it. It's that simple. All of you made very intelligent guesses, but it was very simple. They hear their guy winning. Wait a minute. How could you listen to that debate and think Jimmy Swaggart won? The guy got creamed. But yes, they hear their guy winning. Listen to the debate one more time, and you will hear them cheering and whistling and clapping when he says ridiculous things. Why? Because what happens in a debate is you support your guy. You become defensive, you put a mental block. So all the good stuff that the Shaykh Ahmed Didat rahimahullah was saying, they couldn't hear most of it. A lot of it they couldn't hear. They could just hear the arguments of their guy, and they would cheer for him. Yes, he got him. He got him. Tell him about the Lord. Yeah? They're excited about that. So that's why the debate is not a good way of giving da'wah. It's not necessarily a way of giving da'wah. It's basically a way of putting someone in their place. If someone has been speaking too much and you need to get them to zip it, for example, then you would have a debate, hit them on the head. But it's not the best thing for da'wah. So the first thing is, let's get this aggression out of our system, attacking, fighting. Even people, when they one-on-one try to give da'wah to someone, they think the way of doing it is to corner that person and choke him. And before he dies, with his last breath, he will say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Just let me corner him. Well, didn't you say 2 minutes earlier that this was the case? What about Matthew chapter 4, verse 23? Oh, I got you. Get him. Khalas, he's about to die. He'll say the Shahadah, don't worry. And man mata ala la ilaha illallah, dakhal al-jannah, right? Whoever says la ilaha illallah, he goes to paradise. Okay, I hope we can agree. Let's not be aggressive. Let's tone it down. Let's stop these debates. Every weekend there's a debate. Huh? Oh, there's a debate about this, a debate about that. Khalas, take it easy with that. So, I want to talk about knowledge, right? We're at a day and age, especially young people in the audience, please listen up. We're living at a day and age where we cannot afford to be ignorant about many things. We can't afford to not know how to answer these basic questions. And the truth is, it's the same old. If I go out now, I'm planning and I'm preparing a team to go out and give some da'wah. Let's say specifically to non-Muslims. Now I have to prepare them for certain questions that they're going to be asked. What are these questions going to be? What do you think? Same old. What do you think? Jihad, thank you very much. Hijab, why do Muslim women wear hijab?
Marriage to
Aisha, same old. Why did your Prophet marry a young woman, and so on and so forth? Naam? How many women can you marry? And we're proud of that, 4, right? Okay. So then basically it's the same old. So we can't afford to not know the answers to these questions. And for the young people, you can't afford to be playing video games all day, just playing games. Your Prophet is being insulted every day. Muslims being assaulted every day. People ignorant of Islam being attacked on the television and everywhere on the internet, and we're just playing games. We can't afford that. So, are we saying then everyone has to be like Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, for example? No. But interestingly, about Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, there was a wonderful and really phenomenal description of him. They said, people in his time, they said that whenever he spoke on a topic, you felt as if he spent his entire life preparing that one topic. This is how he was. So if he spoke on one issue, you felt as if his whole life, his PhD was just on this topic. Then tomorrow, he speaks on a totally different topic. And again, you feel as if he spent his whole life preparing this one topic. And the day after that, he speaks on another issue. And you feel like he spent his whole life preparing that. Now, we don't expect people to be like that. But at the same time, all the questions have been answered, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's just a matter of having this information. So, you don't have to be a scholar necessarily to give da'wah, but I think we'll all agree that the more you know, the more effective you will become as a da'iyah, the more you'll be able to respond to questions properly as a da'iyah, and you won't have to do all the escapes and okay. So you don't have to basically do the escapes and do the cheap answers and the watering down of Islam and diluting and all that stuff that happens now. What's jihad? Well, jihad is a struggle, So if I can't open the water faucet, that's a struggle, it's jihad. Aren't you sweet? That's not what it is. And you find people, so either out of ignorance or out of, it could be other things, lack of courage, lack of izzah. And no one's compelling anyone to give strange answers. And I remember one time, this imam, when the US invaded Iraq, he felt that he had to say something about it on the minbar. But now, there's probably a difference between what he really wanted to say and what he could bring himself to say. So he came up on the minbar and he started to say, our soldiers, our brothers and sisters who are fighting in Iraq right now, he's talking about the American soldiers, he's not talking about them. He said, they are my brothers and they are my sisters. Is this the best thing you could come up with and tell the believers on the day of Al-Jum'ah? Who on earth put a gun to your head and said, give a khutbah on Iraq? You could have spoken about anything, about khushu', about the importance of salah, brotherhood, smiling. Who said you have to give this topic? If you can't speak the truth, then don't speak. So this is what we're getting today, a lot of it, and it has to do with just lack of good knowledge. If people had good knowledge and good analogies and good answers, they wouldn't suffer. There is no difficult question about Islam. A lot of times people say, what about if someone asks you about the controversial subject of this? First of all, Allah doesn't reveal controversy, does He? Allah doesn't reveal controversy. Yeah. Oh, stay away, please give a khutbah, but stay away from controversial subjects. Well, what are you talking about, controversial subjects? Yeah. So Allah doesn't reveal controversy, right? And if you know the answer, it doesn't even seem like something that will make you nervous or controversy or anything of that sort. If you know the answer, khalas, it's simple. Give a quick analogy and you're done. Yeah. But we now allow people to trap us and paint us into a corner because we just didn't look into it very carefully. Slavery in Islam, the age of Aisha, simple answers for that. Extremely simple answers for that. Obviously, we're not going into that right now. Okay, so what's the reason we don't reach out and tell everyone about Islam? What's the reason we don't reach out to people? Do we not care enough maybe about people? And by the way, you'll see that the prophets were superb du'at, and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a superb da'iyah, the companions were superb du'at because they cared for people. And wait a minute, care for people? The minute you say things like care for people, care for non-Muslims, someone thinks, oh, this guy, he doesn't know wala and bara very well. Loving for the sake of Allah and hating for the sake of Allah. Oh. And I always tell, especially young people, bring me the most severe book on wala and bara. And you will see that it allows for loving people who also, in any book. One time I went, a masjid threw a bunch of brand new books on wala and bara. After 9/11, of course, everything was going into the dumpster. Yeah. So they threw these books on wala and bara. You're like, okay, what's so scary about wala and bara? Read it carefully. The last paragraph of the book was talking about how you can also love a non-Muslim. Yani if someone now becomes a Muslim, he has to hate his mother? Yeah? Would that be good da'wah? They told him, listen, hey, so you need to become Muslim today, inshallah you will start to pray and you will become a better person, but you must hate your mother, okay? Because she's a non-Muslim, you have to hate her. What do you think the guy will say? Ashhadu an la, I never liked her anyways, ashhadu an la. So An-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam cared for people. If he didn't care, he would have crushed the Meccans between the two mountains, true or false. Immediately would have crushed them. But he didn't do that because he cared, right? And even in our old days in Washington DC, we had one brother, he was an excellent da'iyah. He worked harder than anyone else. And one day he told us his secret. You know, Washington DC is predominantly African American and he's African American. He said, these are my people and I care for them. I love them. That's why he was a good da'iyah. So do we care for people? Let me ask you this. Suppose your neighbor next door, he's your enemy. And he does nasty things to you. He'll egg your house and throw toilet paper in your tree and do all kinds of nasty things. And there was known, established, an official hatred between the two of you. But one day you're going to work and you see your neighbor running out of his house and he's on fire. What will you do?
Try and put them out.
Your brother said he'll try and put him out. Do you guys agree with that? But he's your enemy though. You hate him and he hates you. He eggs your house. You try to put him out? Yes? Okay. I think all of us would, right? Even if he absolutely hated him. I don't think any one of you will just throw like a bottle of water and be like, hey, use it wisely, okay? And just throw it and drive off. You know? Or serves you right. Next time you egg my house, see you in the hellfire, okay? And drive away. So if we care so much about an individual, if they're on this worldly fire, what about the worst fire? The hellfire of Allah Azza wa Jal. That's more severe. That doesn't decrease when you scream. You know, when you scream, there's a psychological release, yeah, and things hurt less. But this is a fire that is so severe that screaming doesn't make it hurt less. And the first second it touches you is not like the millionth hour that it's touching you. It feels the same level of pain. And if we care for people, and I'm ready to put out the fire on my neighbor to the point where I get burned myself, and I get injured in the process of trying to put him out. If we really care for people, and by the way, do this exercise. The next time you see someone walking in front of you, just imagine them on fire. Imagine their skin burning. What would you do? So, this is the contrast between a generation that spread Islam just on their good manners, In a generation that has the internet and books and material and printed material and access to television and radio, and in the end, people are still don't even know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So we all have a lot more work to do. So if this is the case, then I can't say, well, I'm too shy, really. Even the shy person, you just speak to the first person, speak to the second person, and then see what happens. Even the shy person has other avenues. I'm too shy. I am absolutely terrified. I'm mortified. I can't stand in front of another human being. Okay. Late night when everyone's asleep, I come and put something in front of your door and run like a chicken. Is that okay? Can I do that? Yeah. Can I send someone an email? They'll never catch me. Everyone's a hero on the internet, right? Yeah. I'll break your face and no one can touch you. You're brave, right? So can I email someone something? There's so many avenues through which we can do some work. You know something? A lot of times people tell me things like, I have a friend and we've been friends for a while, but I don't want to bring up Islam because it will make our relationship awkward. Who has experienced that before? It'll make our relationship awkward. I tell them about Islam, so it's like I tried to convert them and it didn't work, and then the next time we meet it'll just be awkward and strange and things like that. So what can I do? The truth is, do you have any evidence to suggest that it will become an awkward situation? Or is it in our head? A lot of times, most things are in our head. Oh, if you tell someone, why don't you become Muslim, they'll become offended. Are you sure of that? Or you just imagine that would be the case? Most of the time, it's imagination. So I have a friend, or a professor, or a co-worker, or a colleague, if I tell them about Islam, it will be strange from that day on. We'll both be having lunch and just staring at each other. No, says who? Just give it a shot, try it, and see what happens. Perhaps the way you present it will make it less awkward. A sister came up to me, she said, I have a friend, we've been friends for like 15 years and I've never told her about Islam. She knows I put on hijab, she knows I pray and I fast in Ramadan, and we've never mentioned Islam. How can I do that? I said, that's so easy. Just tell her, so-and-so, by her name, you're a good friend of mine and we've known each other now for 15 or for 13 years. And in all this time, you know that I dress this way and I pray and I do Ramadan and certain things that you've noticed already about me. But we've never spoken about it, and I just want to explain to you what it is that I do and what I believe, because as you know, my religion is something that's very dear and important to me, and I consider you a very dear and important friend. So I want to tell you about what I believe. What's wrong with that? One person said to me, I have a friend and I've known them for a good while and they're a good person, but I've never told them about Islam. A year ago I gave them a copy of the Qur'an and we never mentioned it again. How can I bring up Islam again? You have it right there. You have the free pass right there. Tell them, hey, I gave you a Qur'an a year ago. Did you read? There's your topic right there. A lot of times we're afraid to bring up the topic. But you know something? If you want to bring up the topic, you'll find a way to bring it up. You can give me any topic and we can go from that topic to Islam. We can go from weather to Islam. Talk about anything. Gun laws, we'll bring it to Islam. Just from any topic you bring it back to Islam. Right? Just like if for the young brothers, when you want to get married, right, and you want to see if the sister will accept you or not. You find a way to bring it back to marriage. They'll talk about anything, they'll bring marriage. And next Prime Minister of the UK, yes, but marriage, sister, is... They tell you in this joke, this man was very, very ugly, right? Extremely ugly, and he wanted to marry a co-worker of his. But so he doesn't know if she'll accept someone as ugly as he is, so he started to test the water. So he tells her sister, what if someone, asked for your hand in marriage, but he was quite ugly? She said, looks aren't that important. What's more important is on the inside. He said, oh, that's a good sign. He said, sister, what if he's like really, really ugly? She said, wallahi, what's most important? His akhlaq, his manners. These things are more important. He said, okay. So sister, what if he's like horrendously ugly? She said, look, deen, manners, what's on the inside, this is more valuable and more important than the outside. He said, sister, what if it's me? She said, now you're pushing it. And I always say you can always joke about ugly people because no one will object. Am I right?
Because everyone's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone's... See, Shaykh Hisham, he's so sweet. He said because everybody's beautiful. See, that's a totally different angle than how I looked at it. I said because if the ugly person says, I object to that joke, you can just tell him, I can see why. We're just joking. We're just joking. Okay. I know. You're waiting for sarcasm and satire and intelligent jokes. Okay. Like I was saying, when you want to find a way to bring up something, you'll find a way. One time this man came up to me, and maybe we'll start taking from the audience some scenarios and some their own object. I'll close with this.
Interactive in any way.
Jamil Jiddan. So this man comes up to me, he says, at work they don't allow me to talk to anyone about Islam. And my manager focuses on me especially, and his beard, mashallah, up to here. He says, they focus on me, they don't let me talk to anyone about Islam. I said, okay, tell me about, there's always a way, always a way. So tell me about the setup at your office. He says, we have cubicles. I said, fantastic. When you have a break or lunch break, pick up the phone, call a Muslim friend, or just pick up the phone and start talking about Islam. As if you're talking to your friend about Islam. So anyway, so I told the man, so since Allah is the one who gives you your health, your eyesight, your loved ones, your intelligence, things that you cannot put a price on, doesn't it make sense then to only worship Allah, to only worship Him, to only praise Him, since He's the one who created you, and just talk on the phone. And people by their nature, they love to listen and eavesdrop. So they're going to be listening in, and what your point now is to pique their interest. Okay, say something that will get their attention, and then they will come to you. And they'll say, look, I couldn't help but overhearing you talking about this. Could you explain this aspect to me? Now, can they go and complain to the manager that you were talking to them about religion? No, because they came to you. So there are ways around it. There's so many ways. And this is a technique that we refer to a lot of times as indirect da'wah. And it's so many people use it, and it's so successful. And you have a cell phone, you're on a bus, or you're waiting in line for something, or you're at the doctor's office and it's very quiet and it's boring, just pick up the phone. So anyway, since Allah is the one who gives you your health and your intelligence and your eyes, just go, just talk, enjoy yourself. It's indirect, no one's listening. I mean, everyone's listening, but no one's really, there's no awkwardness involved. Enjoy yourself. Okay, let's have you give me some of the obstacles, or some of the, what do we call it?
Challenges.
The challenges, challenges too.
You still have 15 minutes to go, so I don't know if you want to carry on or you want to listen from the audience.
Yeah, I want to hear what are specific challenges. I don't want to talk out of context here. Faddal.
For the sisters to hear, if you would mind coming forward. Yeah, please.
If it's short, I can repeat it. If it's not long.
خلاص.
Yeah. Save you some getting up.
Agree to repeat.
جدا ما في مشكلة. يحفظك. تفضل.
So quite a few times when I'm speaking to someone, they know about Islam, to a certain degree they know the basics, what it's about. And when I tell them, because I've watched a couple of your lectures, I said to them, well then what's stopping you from being a Muslim right now? And then a lot of times they say, I need to learn more about it, and I need to learn more about my own religion, most of the times Christianity. I mean, I think these guys are expecting to be like Bukhari before they become Muslim. I tell them, if you study for 40 years, you're never going to conquer the religion. So how can I push it to the, of course they need to learn more, but I think they're expecting to learn so much before it's going to take them 20 years. So how can I, get it through to them?
Very good, excellent. So to repeat the question, the brother is saying that a lot of times when he's giving da'wah to a non-Muslim, and he gets to, after he explains Islam in brief, then he asks them to become Muslim. Then they respond that they need to learn more about Islam, or they need to learn more about their own religion, research their own faith more, or research Islam more before they decide to become Muslim. And in his words, he tells them that if you study for 40 years, you won't conquer the religion. So how do you get them to leave this idea of, I want to study everything before I can make a decision to become Muslim? And there's the long story and the short story. I'm going to give you the short story, okay? And perhaps you recall the analogy of the car. Do you remember that one? Okay. So basically, this was a problem we always faced. You meet people who say, look, I need to study more. I can't just become, you spoke to me for 7 minutes and everything you said was beautiful, but I cannot change my life based on 7 minutes of beautiful talk. So we actually came up with this analogy, and it has worked very, very wonderfully for us, alhamdulillah. We give an analogy, and we actually say this to the non-Muslim. Now, I need you to understand when you can use this analogy. You have to use it in its place. Pause, let's go to another story, okay? A Muslim came and asked this question. He said, I was speaking to a non-Muslim friend of mine, and the non-Muslim was speaking about, fornication, how everyone, has the right to fornicate. So then he said, I used the technique of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, you don't expect the technique from the Prophet ﷺ to fail. He says, so I asked this man, I said, would you accept that for your mother? And you know this hadith, when the Prophet ﷺ asked the companion, would you accept that for your mother? And he said, no. Would you accept it for your sister? He said, no. He said, the same way people don't accept that for their mothers and their sisters. So he says, I asked the young man, would you accept that for your mother? The guy said, sure, if she consents. He said, would you accept that for your sister? He said, yeah, if she's okay with it. He said, this was a technique of a Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and it failed. How? Very simply, you applied it in the wrong place, ya akhi. Very wrong place. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used this technique with a Muslim who understood halal and haram and day of judgment and reward and punishment and Allah Azza wa Jal. So when he was and he also understood ghira, he had this jealousy, protective jealousy. So when he was asked these questions, it made sense to him. Okay? So you're taking a technique applied on a Muslim, you're trying to use it on someone else. So you have to apply the right technique in the right place. So going back to our answer, you have to apply this analogy only works if someone agrees with everything. The only thing stopping him from Islam is not a fiance or something. No, the only thing stopping him is, I need to read more. One time this happened, we were giving a lecture to non-Muslims, and towards the end of the lecture a man came up and he was very interested in Islam. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. He said yes. Salah, yes. Hajj, zakah, Sawm, yes. Okay, why don't you become Muslim right now? He said, look, in everything in my life, I don't make decisions like overnight, like immediately like that. I think about things, I take my time. He said, like with this decision, I like the idea, but I need to go home, I need to read, I need to find out exactly what I'm getting into. And I told him, you know what, I appreciate that. Because I am actually just like that. I don't make any impulsive decisions. I do my research before I make any big decision. And no doubt this is a big decision. But let me ask you this, because we always try one more time, right? Always try one more time. So I said, look, suppose then, I told you this is my car, it's outside, it's a brand new Mercedes-Benz, alright? S-Class, let's make it, so it's an expensive Mercedes-Benz. I'll tell you, this car is yours for free, okay? And just so for the sake of our exercise, there's no bomb in it, alright? There is no dead body in the trunk. Just a very rich guy says, look, you can have my S-Class Mercedes, and if just go, what's the word? Ifhas. Examine it, and if you like it, you can keep it. So now let's do the exercise together. Someone put your hand up and tell me, if I tell you this is a brand new car outside, cost about $130,000, I don't know how many pounds, 90,000 pounds let's say. If you like it, you can take it. What will you examine? Put your hand up and tell me, what would you examine? Somebody?
The engine.
Okay, so brother said engine, another brother over here said engine. Very good. Nothing, huh? Fantastic, I love you guys. Just take the car. Okay. Okay, but I want specific components. Nah, Ibrahim. The looks. So you're really checking the body, right? Because maybe it is a brand new S-Class Mercedes, but a train hit it and cut it in half. So you've got two halves now. So would you accept it if it has two halves? Probably not. Okay, so that means I'm checking the body, I'm checking the engine. I'm looking for one more thing. What will you check? Yes, sir.
The keys. If the keys is the right one.
The key. I love you, man. He said he will check the keys. If I give you a car for 90,000 pounds, if it has the wrong keys, you'll leave it. Pay 50 pounds to get new keys, right? We're scared of the keys. Brother in the back, yes. Sorry. And what component are you checking when you say does it start? Naam? Ignition. And the ignition, again, a car costs 90,000 pounds. I can replace the ignition, right? I'll take the key from my door at the house and just stick it in there and start it. Huh? Documents, huh? We said it's not stolen. There's no dead body in the trunk. It's a millionaire. Why? Naam. The interior, okay, possibly. Naam.
It's not clamped.
Clamped? Clamped, huh? Which you're checking for the engine one more time.
No, we're checking if the wheel hasn't been clamped, meaning the car is unable to move.
Come on, man. 2 words. Plasma torch. You give me a 90,000 pound car, I'll cut that thing like all night. I'll call brother, do you have saw? Come, bro. Who's going to spend the overnight? Okay, the last thing, the transmission, right? Because the transmission, the gearbox, maybe you call it here. The transmission on a brand new S-Class Mercedes will cost thousands of pounds, and the engine will cost thousands of pounds. But the ignition, the key, that's nothing. I can afford that. The tires, that's nothing. No one refuses a 90,000 pound car because I don't like the tires, they're old. Put new tires, ya akhi. You know something? I wouldn't put new tires. Some people check the brakes. Forget the brakes. I'll roll it home. You know? It's 90,000 pounds. So what happens is, in the example, in the analogy, you ask the non-Muslim to tell you what are the key components he will check for in the car. And in the end, tell him if everything makes sense, the most important things made sense, would you accept? And he would say, yes, I'll accept the car. And this person said, I'll accept the car. And then I asked him a question. I said, why is it that when the most important things in the car made sense to you, you accept the car? But when the most important things that I explained to you in Islam, meaning the 5 pillars, made sense to you, you rejected. What did he do? Wallahi, he looked down like this. He said, yes, you're right. I'll say it, let's go. Meaning I'll say the Shahada. And he said it. So in this analogy, you explain to people, this is how life works. We don't, if I want to buy a car, I don't go to a dealership and say, look, let me drive this thing for 50,000 miles. If I'm trying to buy a house, I don't tell the realtor, well, let me move the children, the family, the dog and everybody in. We're going to live here for 4 or 5 months, then I'll give you my decision. We look at the basic components, and if they agree, we make a decision. And so that's, in a nutshell, without taking too much time, that's one way of doing it. I probably just time for 1 or 2 more. Any other obstacle?
Yes, brother. Hello.
تفضل, yes sir.
I just, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
I think rather there is a problem with us, like as a Muslims, right? We try to make dawah all the time with the Christian people. We try to convince them all the time. We never let them, for instance, to listen to us first little, or, we try to always convince, showing that our religion is the best, as they think always that their religion is the best. And this is a problem with the Muslims. Sometimes they don't even know, right, the subject properly, how to convert someone, and then they use the wrong words all the time, the wrong phrases. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
I think that's why we fail all the time, most of the time.
Okay, very good, and I'll have to agree with you. It's very true. A lot of times people, they don't have an idea of what good da'wah is. They use the wrong words, wrong approach, wrong technique, and it kills da'wah. And I would say, like in my 10 years of teaching the da'wah, fiqh of da'wah courses, I would tell the students in the beginning that a lot of this course is unlearning the wrong way of giving da'wah, more so than learning the correct way. Because for so many people there is just this wrong way of giving da'wah, and that's what we think it is. So you're absolutely correct in that, Jazakallah khair, and that hence the importance of training, da'wah training for people, or of course, experience. You don't have to necessarily take a full session or class, but you could also go hang out and spend time with experienced du'at and learn from them, and so on and so forth. So barakallahu feek, jazakallah khair for that comment. And someone had their hand up over here. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, some people, if they really like the idea of Islam, one thing that I've noticed might hold them back, like someone I know, is the fact, they say that in Islam, if you choose to leave Islam, you can be executed. How, would you overcome this?
Okay, so, So the brother is saying, perhaps one of the things that deter people from becoming Muslim is that if you leave Islam, if you apostatize, that you will be killed. Yeah, so why would someone become Muslim if that's the case? And this reminds me of a true story that happened during the times of one of the khulafa. There was a Christian that used to always be in his gathering. He was a good guy, this Christian. So one day the Khalifa now gives him da'wah. He says, Ya akhi, or one of the Umara perhaps, he tells him, why don't you become Muslim? So the Christian says, I like to drink too much. I love drinking. That's why I won't become Muslim. So the Emir tells him, listen, become Muslim and drink. What's the problem? So the guy takes his Shahada. Then right after he takes Shahada, he says, if you drink, we'll whip you. And if you leave Islam, we'll kill you. Okay. And again, this goes back to point number 1. When we the more details we learn about Islam, the easier we'll see it is to explain things like this. Let me ask you this. If someone, let's say someone lives in a Muslim village, okay, or a Muslim town, and he goes to work and he comes back, then he prays Maghrib and Isha in the masjid, then he goes to work and like that. If this man suddenly decides to leave Islam, but he kept it to himself, he just stopped not going to, he didn't go to the masjid for Maghrib or Isha, and didn't make it public, but he's just stopped believing in Allah and Islam. What's the Islamic ruling on this person? What should happen to him? The answer is? Nothing. Thank you very much. Nothing. He left Islam and he kept it to himself. There's nothing. Yeah, khalas, he has the right to do that. And so, can people leave Islam? Yes, absolutely, they can leave Islam. You can leave Islam, but you keep quiet about it. Why? Because the minute you start to make it public, now the state, and we're talking about the Islamic State, it has an interest in this person. Why? Because when you leave Islam or you have certain doubts that make you, not believe in Allah Azza wa Jalla or the Qur'an or Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if you have certain doubts like that, the minute you start to make it public, you are bound to affect people who are close to you. So you might affect your parents, you might affect your children, you might affect your wife, you might affect your brothers and sisters, your siblings. You could affect your neighbor, you could affect your close friend, you could affect close workers, co-workers, or students if you're a teacher. You understand? So now, if you make it public and you keep mentioning these doubts, and there'll be people without not enough knowledge, and they might be fall for these doubts as well. So now the state has an interest in you because you're making it public, and you will affect other people, and the state looks out for the population. So now you will be a person of interest. But anyone can leave Islam, and it's no big deal. As long as they keep it a secret. The minute you make it public, and now you make it public, then the state has an interest in this individual. But now look at it. There's a difference between how Islam deals with the apostate versus perhaps, let's just say, in the Bible how it's dealt with. He is still given many chances. For example, in the Bible, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 13, verse 8 and 9, it explains that the one who leaves his religion, that you should kill him. And it says, let your hand be the first to strike him. Okay, you want to be the first one who kills that person who leaves Islam. Now in Islam, it doesn't work like that. And I have to say this because people think that's the case. One time, a brother left Islam and he was a revert. He left Islam after 2 weeks. And there's a different ruling for this person. It's known as a murtad milli. Okay, there's a different ruling. But one of the brothers, he himself was a revert. He said, so-and-so left Islam. I'm going to take him hunting and we're going to have an accident. So he thought it was his job to he's going to go Dick Cheney on the guy. Basically. So the truth is, and we've got like a minute or so, the scholars sit with the person. Then they try to explain whatever doubt came into his head. That's one. Two, then they start to, not in any particular order, then they try to establish or reaffirm that yes, this book is from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Here's the evidence, and this is the final prophet. Here's the evidence, right? Then, and of course, these are scholars appointed by the state, or the Amir, or the Imam, or the Khalifa. And then they even do another tactic. They threaten him with the sword. So they say, look, just become Muslim, or you will get the sword if you continue upon this. What happens? What is this really? This is an opportunity for him to say, you know what? Yes, you're right. Once he sees the sword, he's like, I understand your argument now. He can pretend and go home to his family and keep his mouth closed and keep not praying and not going to Jum'ah or not fasting, but he can at least save himself by pretending even. He's even given that opportunity. You understand? But the more people, let's say, spread the doubts and speak that we're a group and they make an organization, we're Muslims who have abandoned Islam and we are more rational, scientific and so on. And imagine 4 people leave Islam in a village and they start a club. 10 years back, you come back to this village, there might be 237 of them. Why? Because they spread it. But if these 4 people kept it to themselves, you come back 10 years later, maybe there are only 6 or 7. Why? Because they kept it to themselves. So these are things you explain to the person. And one of the best selling points you have is that, look, we don't, this guy in the streets of London doesn't want to become Muslim because you guys killed someone if they leave Islam. So what are you talking about, man? This is not an Islamic state and no one will do anything to you. Of course, that's not your selling point to say you have a trial period, right? But at the same time, who's gonna, what do you guys have regularly after Isha? Brothers and sisters, there are a few announcements. There's a brother who left Islam. We're gonna chop his head off in the parking lot outside. Please join us. Barakallahu feekum. This question says, what manhaj are you upon? Allah, Allah. UK, you want a piece of me? Come on. Let's roll. Okay, first of all, you need to understand, it was not from the way of the early Muslims, and it was not of the way of the Sahaba to ask people this question. Okay? No one has ever put it upon you to always question people's manhaj. So, salam alaikum, how are you doing, brother? What's your name? Where are you from? MashaAllah. What manhaj are you? This is not part of the way of the early Muslims to question people's manhaj, okay? But to answer the question, my manhaj is that of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay? And my first teacher, he was a Syrian scholar, he was a student of Shaykh Al-Albani, and every other one of my scholars that I studied with were either students of Al-Albani or Ibn Uthaymin or Ibn Baz and so on and so forth. So, but it's not from the way of the early Muslims to question people's manhaj constantly. It's like, where are you from and what's your manhaj? Oh, that's nice. Okay. So that's the first thing. But if you want a piece of me, I'm here. Don't worry about it. This question says, Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Do you think the Muslims are discussing Sharia too much when giving da'wah to non-Muslims rather than Iman and the signs of Allah in the universe? The Sahaba were first introduced to Islam, not the Islamic penal code. Brilliant, sister. This is the problem, okay? Right now, if I say the word Sharia, what do you think of? Let's be honest. There we go. Something's flying off, either head or hand. Okay? But this is the penal code, ya akhwan. For example, in democracy, I'm going to pick on America. In America, in a democracy, we have lethal injection. We capital punishment. We kill people by putting a poison in their blood system, or we put them in a chamber full of a deadly gas, and when they inhale, they die. Or we put them on a very comfortable chair, but it has electricity all over it that kills them also. Now, when the President of the United States sells the democracy, when he sells democracy to the world, does he say, yes, we're going to bring democracy, we'll put people in gas chambers, we'll electrocute and kill people? Does he do that? No, because this is the penal code, which is the scariest part, which is supposed to deter people. The problem is, this is how a lot of times, besides our friends in Hollywood, even we present the Sharia. We present it as stuff being chopped off. And recently, one of the Muslim presidents, in a speech, televised speech, he said, we're going to bring Sharia, we're going to cut off hands, we're going to cut off feet. And why would you sell the Sharia like that? You're selling me the harshest and scariest part as what is normal. Okay? But so it's like, if you look at the Sharia, it's a wonderful, beautiful palace, okay? But it has a boundary around it, okay? And that boundary, you touch it, you get hurt. You don't come near the boundaries. But it's a beautiful palace. So do I not describe the palace and I just describe the barbed wire on the fence or on the wall of the palace? This is exactly what's happening now. So yes, don't spend all your time talking about Sharia and we'll kill the adulterer. Have you ever committed adultery, by the way? This is what we would do to you in an Islamic state. We dig a hole. Okay, wait a minute. Not necessary. These are the boundaries. So what if we sell the other part of the Sharia? There will be justice. There will be no poor people. There will be no one that will go to bed hungry. There will be no corruption, no bribes, anything like that. So you are absolutely correct in that, and that's not your speaking point for da'wah anyways. Your speaking points, Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the final messenger, and the 5 pillars. Why did you go into things being chopped off? How does one deal with questions about Iman and Allah? For example, when did Allah come into being? How do I know there is a God, etc.? Obviously these are they're like 2-3 questions here. And this is probably a good time to invite you to join me for the course that's coming up in about 2 weeks. We're going to do a course here in London. It's called Shahadah, Fiqh of Da'wah. And you will find these cards out here. And it's April 13th, starting April 13th until the second weekend of April 21st. Okay. Now, the only reason I can confidently promote this workshop is that I've been doing it for years and I know the results, alhamdulillah, of the people who attend this workshop. I got an email from a brother, actually in the UK. He listened to it online and it was like a 5-hour version. He listened to 2.5 hours and he paused it. He says to me in the email, I paused it to go buy dinner. He said, on the way I saw a non-Muslim and I said something from the course. He said something back that was expected in the course and I said something back and the guy took his Shahada. So in his email he said, I heard half the course. What happens when I hear the full course? So great things happen. Just kidding. So, Naam?
He's going for dinner.
He's going for dinner all the time after that.
Full course.
So we discuss, allow me to say, brilliant ways of tackling questions like this. Simple analogies sometimes. Like, so we can say, for example, Shaykh Hisham was the first person in this building today. So if I tell you Shaykh Hisham was the first person in the building today, you might ask me, yes, but who was there before him today? No. Listen to me carefully. Today, he was the first one in the building. Yes, I understand that, but who was there before him? I told you today he was the first one. Who was there before him? There cannot be who was there before him. It's a wrong question. Same thing, who is there before Allah? If he is the first, only... I know someone who is not intelligent would ask you who was there before the first. That's what the word first means, Habibi, unless you don't know what it means. There are also other things, like someone will ask you, who created Allah? Oh, Allah has no creator. But everything has a creator, yeah, except Allah. How can Allah not have a creator? Who created Allah? Okay, so what do we do here? We explain to the person that what you're doing, you're asking the wrong question. You see? This is the way we understand Allah. We see a concept, if we see a description of Allah, for example, Allah is the most merciful. How can I understand that? I understand it because I know what mercy is. So I look at mercy, then I magnify it a lot, and I say Allah is very merciful. I understand how Allah is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Then I see that Allah is the most generous. So I see generosity, I understand the concept. Then I magnify it a lot, and I see how Allah is the most generous. But the problem is that then, what happens when I give you a description of Allah that you can't compare to the dunya and magnify? Allah was the first and He was always there and He has no creator. So like, okay, what can I think of that's like that I can magnify? There's nothing. So then you say, how is that possible? That must be an impossibility then. So this is the thing, there's a difference between what you can understand and what you can imagine. Many times people cannot imagine something, so they think it's impossible. Now this is not right. For example, it's almost 8 o'clock. Let me try to end with this very quickly.
We'll do أذان الإقامة straight away.
نوقف الآن؟ نوقف right now?
لا تفضل أكمل عندك 30 ثانية.
طيب, okay. So in 30 seconds I want to say very quickly that what if you... Look, it's done, huh? And the second part of the question about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, how can you prove to them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists? If you understand that there is tons and tons of evidence to point to the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal, then your question will be, okay, where do I start? Because wallahi there is so much. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said something very nice. He said Allah Azza wa Jal created the human being and He created the human body in need of water. So because we're in need of water, Allah Azza wa Jal put water in every corner of the earth. Because we need it to survive. Likewise, Allah created the human being in need of believing in its creator. In need of believing in something. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even more so than water, put evidence to His existence everywhere on earth. So where do I begin? Do I begin with analyzing the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, proving he was a genuine prophet? If he's a genuine prophet, that means he was sent by God, that means God that does exist. Do I begin with the Qur'an and prove how the Qur'an could not have been written by a human being, that it must have been written by a divine being, and that's proof of the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal? And which angle of the Qur'an? I mean, I can take 8 or 9 different angles of looking at the Qur'an, and each one of them will prove that there is a God. So there's tons and ample proof that there is a creator. And one more time, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The questions have been answered before, the proofs have been laid out by the scholars. All you have to do is, it's simple as looking it up on a Muslim website, picking the strongest arguments, and that's your game plan, inshallah. So, that's one thing. If you, inshallah, attend the Shahadah course coming up in April, one of the things that we'll take care of in that course is you'll never ever be worried about the atheist again. Ever. I mean, look, it's the weakest argument. Allah Azza wa Jal, how many times in the Qur'an does Allah refute the Trinity, for example? Many times. Paganism. Many times. Things in the Judaism, for example. Entire surah dedicated to that. How many times did Allah respond or refute the atheist argument in the Qur'an? Once. Just once. Why? Scholars say because it's such a weak argument. Once. Why are we scared of the weakest argument? But we'll explain why the atheist comes to you all confident and arrogant and insulting and everything. There's a reason behind that. And if you attend Shahadah, Fiqh al-Dawah, April 13th, inshallah. This question says, what is the key to giving successful da'wah to Muslims who aren't interested in hearing you out? Here's the key. Okay? You have to find out why they're not interested. That's exactly what it is. Okay? So I don't try to insist and force you to be interested. I try to find out why you're not interested. So the conversation goes like this. You tell them, look, I noticed that whenever I talk to you about religion, you change the subject, or you don't like to talk about it. Right now, I don't want to talk to you about religion. I just want to know why you don't want to talk about religion. Okay? That's it. And it's very, very, very effective, inshallah, because once you tell them, okay, tell me why you don't want to talk about religion. And if there may be other reasons hidden that they don't want to admit to you, that the guilt of not practicing, and it makes me feel guilty. But it may be other things like, discussion of religion always ends in a fight and an argument. Is that the only reason you don't want to talk about religion? Because it's going to end in an argument? Yes. Okay. Then I'm going to talk to you about religion, and I promise you, I swear by Allah, we're not going to argue. Now it's their excuse. So this is the scenario in which that was the problem. Always with da'wah, with Muslims, with non-Muslims, you have to find out why. Very important. Many times people come up to me, and please don't do this at the end of this lecture. There's a brother, and every time we tell him to pray, he starts to eat boiled eggs. Why does he do that? But what can I tell him? I can't tell you what to tell him. You have to find out why he does that every time it's time for salah. There's my mother, and every time it's time for salah, she says this or does that or that type. What can I tell her? It's not about what can you tell her at the moment. It's about why does she behave like that. So why? Always find out why. Someone doesn't want to become Muslim? Why? Someone doesn't want to pray? Why? If I tell you tell me someone doesn't want to pray. Oh, go tell him this hadith and give him that ayah and give him this CD. No, find out what's his problem. You might discover, as you investigate, it's linked to some major sin he committed, like let's say 7 months ago, and decided he's not worthy of praying, and so on and so forth. Find out the why, and you're halfway there, inshallah. Okay? The question says, how do you deal with Christians? Whenever I try to point something wrong with the Bible, they say it's open to interpretation. They also say the Qur'an is open to interpretation. Number one, first thing we have to note in the question, try not to make that your approach is to discuss what's wrong with the Bible. That's a last resort. I know, even if you're good at it and you know your passages and your verses very well, and you can destroy them at the end of the day, but you must admit that it takes you a good while, because give them this verse, then they give you the other verse, and then another contradiction, and then they tell you in the end it's interpretation, and you make very little headway of any, if any. So number one, as an approach, try not to do that, and always use the Bible. And I know maybe you've read some good books and you've got some good arguments, but try not to use that. Talk about the beauty of Islam first. Yeah. Now, if they say it's open to interpretation, you tell them, okay, this verse open to interpretation. I show you another verse that's open to interpretation. In the end, the question is, what is the value of this book as a book of guidance if everything in it is open to interpretation? And some Muslims make the same argument about the Qur'an. Oh, that's how you understood the verse. That's not how I understand the verse. Number one, what's the value of the Qur'an as a book of guidance if there was no specific meaning of the Qur'an? There's a specific meaning. Otherwise, Allah wouldn't have said, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. Ask them what? If everything's open to interpretation, well, just take yours and run with it. Why do I have to ask the person of knowledge? I have to ask them because there's a specific meaning Allah intended and they know it. That's why. Allah Azza wa Jalla describes the Qur'an that it was revealed بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. What does mubin mean? Clear. So that means it can't be just vague and everyone will see. This one reads the verse, oh, it means this. The other guy goes, jump rope, and everyone feels, okay, it can take me in a different direction. Also, the scholars say if the Qur'an had no specific meaning, why would there be a court or a justice system? Why would there be rulings? Because someone could steal, then you go in front of the judge and you tell, Your Honor, that's your interpretation of this verse. According to my interpretation, I didn't steal. I took opportunity of something that was available with no one watching, and Allah, hanalab, So and so on and so forth. So the argument holds no water. And if you tell me every verse is open to interpretation. One time this Christian told me, I told him there's no proof at all of the divinity of Jesus in the Bible. He said it's there, but you can't see it because God didn't touch you. I said, if that's the case, I'm not going to even worry about it on the day of judgment. And if what you think is right on the day of judgment, let's suppose you're right, yeah. On the day of judgment, then no one ever has to examine this book of yours or look into it, because I can just say, well, God, I looked at your book, it didn't make any sense, and you didn't touch me, so I could understand it. So, what's the value of sending a book that you cannot understand unless God touches you? They might as well just touch you without the book, yeah. يعني صح ولا لا? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. How would you go about giving da'wah to your own family? Again, this is one of those questions, yeah? It's one of the very common questions, but a lot of times people would expect me in the answer to this, just give you how to give da'wah to your family. Okay, what are the dynamics? Is your family non-practicing and you're practicing? When you started practicing, did you make their life miserable by telling them haram, 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 you broke the television, you did things in the house, and now they think you're extreme and there's a very bad relationship? Or there's a decent relationship, maybe your father's a little practicing. Then what's the situation? Okay, how old are you? How old are they? Their background, are they very cultural when it comes to Islam? The most important thought I want to get across now is that there's so many variables and so many factors involved that if I were to give you the answer, this is how you give da'wah to your family, don't accept it from me, because that would be proof that I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay? If any shaykh tells you without asking you the details, the dynamics, and just as this is what you do, then they don't know what they're talking about. So then what can I say that's beneficial to the questioner? It would depend on a lot of things, yeah. But for the most part, you do show them the necessary respect. And if at some point you did burn the bridges, like a lot of people have done in the past, when they first started practicing, they burnt all the bridges, because dinner we were arguing about Islam, lunch we argued about Islam, breakfast we argued about Islam. In the end, the family said, I don't want to hear about Islam. So now 2 months later you want to bring up the topic again. No, now you're at the stage of rebuilding and repairing those bridges. So once the bridges are repaired, then you start to cross over carefully. So I'll just end with that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam.
Should we have one more question?
Okay, زي ما
Is that
تحب.
alright?
زي ما تحب.
شكرا شيخ.
نقرأ ولا من الأودينس؟
خلاص ناخذ اثنين، واحد من هنا وواحد from this one as well.
طيب.
So let's take one question from the brothers and one from there. You've asked a question, brother. Muhammad, you didn't ask a question.
Yeah.
تفضل.
Basically, when it comes down to Muslims today, like it's like when you're giving da'wah, they'll start criticizing you for giving da'wah because they're not doing it, like, yeah. But like it's because people are weak these days. They don't want to show that they're Muslim. They want to shave their beard. They want to wear Western clothes. But Allah says, don't copy the kafirs, innit? So we might all be munafiqeen, you know. We're not, or semi-Muslims, you know. So when it comes down to it, like when it comes down to the Dajjal system, like so it's like we're given open da'wah, yeah. So how should the people, like, basically who want to give da'wah, like as Muslims, like because they don't want to be up forward, you know, straightforward to the non-Muslims, when you have to be in Islam to speak truth, like, but people are afraid to speak the truth.
So your question is,
so how should they like basically
how should the Muslims,
the weak ones,
the weak
ones
Muslims,
that want to, like, you know, who want to give da'wah, like,
how should they give da'wah to the non-Muslims?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's always a scary combination, right? Muslims who's like too afraid to even be Muslim, and then he wants to give da'wah. It's like, and we get this problem a lot also in America. And these are the people who just water down Islam, you know, and they make Islam look like every other religion. So they'll tell you things like, you know, the Qur'an says Jews and Christians will enter into paradise, and would you like to become Muslims? And I'm like, no, your Qur'an said I'll go into paradise, why should I? You know, they water it down so much. So like these people themselves are, obviously they're, as much as we say da'wah itself increases your iman, but these people need to be built up to that level as well before they go out, and they can do more damage than good actually. So, and if you know these people, then you can instruct them with evidence, on what to say and what not to say. and what the evidence is. Like the ayat say this and the Qur'an says that. You cannot go up to someone and say something totally different. And perhaps get them involved with organized da'wah groups so they can see what is being said, how it's being done, and things along those lines. Wallahu ta'ala alam. And all other 4 questions, or other 3, they're all good questions and deserving of being responded to, but because of brevity of time. But this question is very simple. It says, can a Muslim woman give da'wah to her non-Muslim work colleagues? And she has a normal working relationship with. The scholars say that a Muslim woman, can give da'wah to a non-mahram male, for example, so long as the conversation does not go outside the confines of, or the subject of da'wah. Once we get into, I love the color of your hijab and hey giggle giggle, then we have a problem. But as long as it doesn't go beyond that, then it's okay. Now with that being said, because of the time that we live in, strongly recommend that if suppose there's nobody but you, and a woman comes up to you and she says, can you tell me about Islam? Alright? Or there's no one but the sister, and a man comes up to her and says, can you tell me about Islam? Given our society and in the world today, why on earth would you continue for weeks just talking at night and under the covers like, well, qala sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and why would you continue like that? So initially there was nobody but me, so then I passed her on to another sister. Okay? Or initially there was no one but you, sister, and the male came to you. But later on you pass them on to someone else who's capable. There's no reason why for 4 or 5 days you should continue talking and chatting and sending, smiley faces, and be careful. Okay? Shaitan ruins things. I want to close by telling you about one page in the notes in the course that's coming up. I have been teaching dawah courses for about 10 years, okay? I know what can happen, inshallah, if you take the material and try it. That's why I'm strongly trying to advise you and urge you to sign up for this course. Because I know and not because I put together some course, but because I know what this course has done in the past, yeah? So there's a page in the notes that follows a new technique. The old technique, let's say, for example, of discussing Trinity, we go back and forth. I give you a verse, you give me a verse, I contradict it with another verse, and so on and so forth. And we would sit down with missionaries for 3 hours, but in the end, alhamdulillah, we would destroy them using their own Bible, right? But it took us 3 hours to destroy them. Now, maybe I shouldn't use words like destroy. How about, what's a nicer word? Convince, refute, convince, understand one another.
Annihilate.
Now it takes about 7 to 10 minutes because of this new technique, where we don't go into the details, but we just question the mindset. Why would you believe in something that's 3 even though it's physically, that's 1 even though it's physically separate? Okay, that's 3, that's not 1. Or one of them dies for 3 days, and instead of becoming 2, it's still 1. So what we tackle the mindset now, and I'm going to give you an example. There's a page in the notes that in the past I used to not teach. I would announce in the beginning of the course, I'm skipping this page because it's self-explanatory, you read it at home. And that used to be page 59, right? Page 59 deals with polytheism, believing in more than one God, something that's very suitable for a Hindu or something like that. Why? So it tackles the mindset. Why would you believe that there's more than one God? There are some huge problems with believing in more than one God. So I taught this in South Africa. I came back some months later, I asked the students what happens after the course. One of them said, my brother and I took the course. We went home and I watched my older brother pick up the phone, turn the course notes to page 59. He called a Hindu friend of his. He went over the arguments from the beginning of the page to the bottom of the page. His friend took Shahada over the phone. So I'm thinking, okay, I go to Australia, and I gave the course there before, and I want to show off to them. I told them one of the brothers in South Africa, this happened to him. So one of the brothers who was there, he said, the same thing happened to me. I said, tell me the story. He said, I took the course. I went home. I opened the course notes to page 59. I called a Hindu friend of mine. I went from the arguments from the beginning of the page until the end of the page, and the guy took his Shahada over the phone. This is the technique of tackling the mindset. Do you want to know what's on page 59? April 13th, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Sallallahu wa baraka ala Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum.